Hello, welcome to viruses and COVID-19. Um, my name is Mrs. Reynolds. We are covering viruses, but with a little bit more of a focus on our current favorite virus, the coronavirus. Um, the official name for this virus is SARS-CoV-2, which is spelled out at the bottom there for you. Severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus 2. The disease that it causes is COVID-19. So that stands for corona, virus, disease. 19 is for the year 2019. So viruses are always a part of the biology curriculum. We are just going to put a little bit more focus on this particular virus. So away we go. Every virus has some kind of a nucleic acid inside of it. It might be DNA, it might be RNA. In the case of the coronavirus or COVID-19, it is an RNA virus, but they're about half and half. You have both kinds. Around the outside of that, you're going to have a capsid, and that is composed of proteins. And to make a virus, technically, that's all you need is the protein capsid with some nucleic acid inside, DNA, RNA, either one. Some viruses are called enveloped viruses, and they have a little envelope around the outside that's made of a lipid bilayer. And that is the same thing that our cells are surrounded by, a lipid bilayer. The COVID-19 virus is an enveloped virus. What that means is it is very easily broken down by soap. Soap is really good at breaking down fats and oils, which is what lipids are. That's why we use soap to wash dishes. So washing your hands is a really good way to get rid of the COVID-19 virus because it breaks down this outer envelope around the outside of it, and then it can't get into your body or into your cells anymore. So the question is, why would a virus have this envelope around the outside of it if it's so susceptible to soap and things like that? The envelope actually helps it get into the host cells. So in this picture, what we're looking at here, the gray line represents the host cell membrane. So that would be like the human cell. The virus here has these orange guys all around the outside of it. These are surface proteins that are on the outside of this little envelope here, and they help it get into these receptors in the host membrane. So human cells and all cells have little receptors on the outside that serve different purposes. These receptors, the ones that the coronavirus attaches to, happen to be called ACE2 receptors. And they are found in all kinds of cells, but one type of cell that has these receptors is found in your lungs, which, as we know, is a place where the COVID-19 coronavirus tends to thrive. So it takes advantage of these receptors and it fits perfectly into them. And then it fuses with the cell membrane, and the capsid and the nucleic acid, in this case RNA, go into the host cell or the human cell. The capsid breaks down, and then you're just left with this nucleic acid here. And all that the virus needs to infect the cell is to get that nucleic acid inside of your cells. And so once it's in there, you are infected. So here's kind of a step-by-step of what happens as a virus infects a cell. So first you've got the RNA coming into the host cell. Next, it's translated into proteins. So it actually uses the host's ribosomes. your human ribosomes and your cells, and it reads the RNA just like it would read your RNA. The ribosomes don't know any different. They just see RNA and they read it and they translate it into proteins. And on this piece of RNA, there are codes for a couple different kinds of proteins. So some of them are structural, and they are going to be used to create the outside of the virus, the capsid of the virus. There is one protein called replicase, which is going to be used to basically make a bunch of copies of this RNA. And some of those copies are going to be sent to ribosomes to get translated and make more of these proteins. Some of them are going to be the RNA that actually goes inside of each new virus. Because what is happening here in this cell, let me click through here, sorry. What is happening here is that little viruses, a bunch of them, are going to get assembled. And in order to do that, you have to have the nucleic acid and then the capsid, the little protein around the outside of it. And then they're going to get released to go infect new cells in the same body. The way that they get released, there's a couple different ways that that can happen. One is that the cell just bursts open and releases all those viruses. That's called lysis, Lysis. Some viruses, though, need that envelope around the outside of it. So in the case of enveloped viruses, they will actually take membrane from the host cell itself, and that will surround the viruses and complete their formation. They do have little surface proteins on the outside of those viruses. So in this case, one of these structural proteins here that's getting translated is going to be sent to the outside of the membrane of the host cell. And then when the viral capsids kind of move through this exocytosis process, exocytosis is when anything leaves a cell and it kind of moves to the membrane, and the membrane pinches around it, and then it moves away with that little coating of membrane around it. So that's what happens when these enveloped viruses spread. So there are a couple different shapes of viruses. This here, let's move my face, that doesn't help. This here is the coronavirus, COVID-19, that we're all familiar with. And you may have seen this exact picture somewhere before. But viruses do come in other shapes. This polyhedral shape, the common cold, is shaped like this. A spear, the flu, is a spear. This helix shape, where it's sort of like a cylinder, this is a virus that infects plants. And this here kind of robot-looking guy is called a bacteriophage. That's a virus that infects bacteria. So bacteria can get infected by viruses too. Anything can pretty much get infected by a virus if it's a cell. And it just has a very interesting looking shape. It has these little legs that it uses to attach to the surface. And then it injects the DNA from up here down into the cell. And this whole part here just remains on the outside. But this is the virus that causes COVID-19. And if we kind of look at the outside of it, it's got these little things sticking out all over, those surface proteins. And that is what gives it its name. So corona, technically in Latin, means crown. This is actually named after the sun's corona, which is named this for the same reason. And the sun's corona are the rays that kind of go out in all directions from the outside of the sun. When you're looking directly at it, you can kind of see it. You can see it better in this eclipse picture here. But you can see how this kind of resembles the lines that a kid would draw coming out of the outside of a sun. And so these here are called spike proteins or S proteins. Those are the proteins that it uses to bind here in these little shapes right there. So this would represent the S proteins, those yellow guys. In here we have the RNA. It's coiled up. RNA, we know, is a single strand, but it still coils in the same way that DNA coils. It's just a single helix instead of a double helix. Here, these little HE dimers, those just help the S proteins attach to the host cell and then break in. And then the envelope is colored red in this picture. So, lastly, are viruses alive? Here we've got some properties of living organisms and properties of viruses. So all living organisms exchange gases. Humans breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants do exactly the opposite. Bacteria will do one or the other. They might do what we do, take in oxygen, release CO2. They might do what plants do and photosynthesize. Viruses do not exchange gases whatsoever. They're not breathing, they're not taking in or releasing any gases. Living organisms metabolize. Metabolism is breaking down something for energy. We break down carbohydrates and through the process of respiration make ATP, and then we use that ATP for energy. Plants actually do the same exact thing. They just make their own sugar first using photosynthesis. But viruses do not do that. They don't eat. They don't use any of their own energy. The way that they move around is by taking advantage of movement that's already occurring. So they might travel through our bloodstream that's already being pumped by our heart. They might travel through the air when we cough or sneeze. They're not mobile on their own. Living organisms all grow in size through their lifespan. They increase in physical size. Viruses don't do that. We saw a couple slides back, they get assembled as little, like a little Lego set would get assembled. You put all the pieces together and then it's built and it's done. The thing that viruses do, which is like living organisms, is they reproduce. We saw the way that they reproduce. They infect a host cell, they take over its machinery and hijack it to make more of themselves, and then they go on to infect new cells. Viruses themselves are not made of cells. They are made of proteins and nucleic acids and sometimes lipids, but they are not composed of cells themselves. So even though sometimes we'll say something killed a virus or a virus will die if it's sprayed with bleach or if you wash your hands or if you leave it for so long on its own, but what it's really doing is disintegrating or falling apart the same way that a machine might fall apart. It's not ever really alive, even though we use that phraseology a lot to say that it was killed or something like that. So next time, we are going to talk about your immune system and how it can protect you from viruses or bacteria and how vaccines can help in that process. So please comment, ask any questions that you might have, and I'll see you guys next time. Miss you.